So I'm really excited to be here doing this today. It's been a long preparation to get to this day, and I'm really grateful to Carol and to Joanne and to Christina, all for helping bring this together. So I'm going to be talking about the healing aspects because for me, the main reason for me to do anything is healing. So my number one archetype is teacher. And that's what I came in to do. But I also knew as a really young child that I was going to do or be something different. I just didn't know what that meant or what that was. So if anybody 20 years ago had told me that I would have this list in front of me of things that I'm doing now, I would have told them they were nuts. I was not on this trajectory, although I was always interested in metaphysics and what that was all about. I knew there was more to life than what my mother told me about death. And that's really when I started questioning, because I never believed that I was buried in a hole in the ground and that was it. So along the way, I have become a religious science minister. And that has fueled a lot of my awakening and my opening. Along with that, I do have a master's in education with a specialty in counseling, and I do have my own small private practice. And I am the founder of Inner Peace of Richmond. I used to have a physical center. I had it for many years. And just, I would say probably in the past 3 or 4 years, I stopped having a physical place because I was physically taking care of my parents and I just couldn't do everything. So when I started doing healing, it was not something that I was looking to do. But as you'll discover as I go on, it was definitely in the works somewhere. So I am a past life regression therapist. I was trained by Pat Walker. Some of you may know her. She trained with Dick Sutphin and she taught us his method. So let me just tell you a little bit about my journey. As a child, I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would hear like a party going on out in the hall. I would hear all of these voices outside my bedroom door. And I would wonder, you know, what's going on out there? Now I think, you know, it might have been ancestors, it might have been guides and angels, but this was something that occurred pretty frequently when I was little. And I always had an interest in other worlds, but my journey really started, and this is kind of interesting. I don't know how many of you remember the actor Freddie Prinze, but I was always really proud of the fact that somebody my age had made it big. And I was very fascinated with him. And he was a actor on a show called Chico and the Man. When he died, and he played Russian roulette with a gun and committed suicide, basically. When he died, it sent me on my journey. And I think, you know, you never know why things happen or what was meant by somebody's death, but, you know, and maybe in the ethers, he knows that he helped me to get started on my spiritual journey. So I started having, because I was questioning so much, I started having experiences. And one of the experiences that I had along the way was that I started to astral travel. And I, of course, at the time didn't know what that meant or what that was, but I would travel not like people describe with the cord being attached to a cord. I literally, my third eye would open and I would go through my third eye and go traveling. There was always somebody with me, behind me, with their hands on my waist, leading and guiding me. And it was always flying, and we would always land somewhere. So I went through beautiful underground world, undersea worlds. I saw beautiful gardens and things like that. But I also was taken to places that I had lived in other lifetimes, and I knew that that's what was happening. I remember one of them was being in a row house, and walking through this house, like at the end of a row of these like apartment buildings. And I went into this place and I walked right to the bedroom. It was a very poor, very poor. I was just very poor in that lifetime, literally just a bed in there. But I knew it was my room, and I knew I had been a boy in that room. So that piqued my interest as well. Another person who really influenced my life and my work was Shirley MacLaine. And I've always felt that she was such a pioneer in courage about speaking what it is that she believed and what she knew. And I started reading her books. And after reading about her having acupuncture and through the acupuncture having a spontaneous regression, I had a spontaneous regression. And I was all of a sudden riding a horse, and I wasn't just like observing, I was there. I was riding a horse, and I looked down at my hands. I had like a ruffled shirt and a breechcloth jacket on, and I was a young boy, and it was during colonial times. And I rode up to a fence, and there were other boys that were sitting on the fence. And one of the boys had one brown eye and one blue eye. And my very first love of my life had one brown eye and one blue eye. So after that experience, I was really freaked out about it. And I used to see an astrologer every year for my birthday who would read my chart. And I told her about this experience. And she said, well, it's the way you died in that lifetime that's freaked you out. She said, you were in the Revolutionary War. And she said, but you've had many lifetimes as a man in military. So that also was something that really piqued my interest. Then I grew up traditionally in a very traditional Jewish home. And on one side of the family, on my mom's side of the family, she had a great aunt and uncle who were Christian Scientists. And on my dad's side of the family, he had a cousin who was a spiritual healer, and his name was Saul. And Saul was my first teacher. He's the one who said to me on the phone, I talked to him because my uncle had passed away, and he was just calling to talk to my dad. And I had cut in the days when you wore only hard contact lenses. I cut both of my eyes with my contact lenses. And so Cousin Saul said, I can take care of that. And I'm saying within seconds, my eyes were fine. And he said to me during that conversation, he said, do you know that you are a healer? And I said, I don't even know what that means. So he said, you have healing hands. And he then started instructing me. From that moment on, he would send me cassette tapes filled with information, told me who to read and what to do. And I had an experience with a friend. He had a healer called Big Eagle in spirit, who he sent to me, and he said, you can use Big Eagle whenever you need to. Just call on him and this is what you do. And so I tried it out on a friend who was pregnant, and she felt what I was doing. I felt what I was doing, and I put it away for the next 20 years. I didn't do anything with it. I wasn't ready for it. But Saul was very instrumental in my moving forward with my healing work. And just as an aside, I was called by the National Enquirer to give testimony about Saul, and we both ended up with our pictures in an article in the National Enquirer. So I say that's how I was infamous. In my counseling work, I started doing inner child work. And the reason that I wanted to learn regression was because the inner child work, often when I would do visualizations with people, it was like they wanted to go back further. And I really didn't know how to handle it. So Pat Walker helped me in training me to know what to do. And we, of course, used Sutphin's method, which is very, very traditional. It's a very traditional method of regression. I also was introduced to Brian Weiss, and I followed his work as well. I saw him at a workshop, and I was very impressed with his work. So I started doing regression. But it felt like it wasn't enough. Like there was more to do than what I was doing. And so I was up in my center one day, and all of a sudden I got this download about soul sessions. And so exactly what to do and how to do it. And that's what my work became. I do soul sessions. I do regression from the perspective of the soul. I think probably most of us do that, but this seemed very specific to me and a way that I needed to proceed, because then it became not only regression work, but it was also experience. People came to me, it might be a regret to connect with a guide or an ancestor, or, something other than just regression. And that's the way my work has evolved. Generally, there are elements of regression in it and whatever I do, but also it can take other turns. And I'm going to share some experiences with you that I've had. So when I wanted to address the making it up. If you feel like you're doing regression, you're making up what you're saying or you question it. First of all, I am the eternal skeptic. And even though I do all of this work, there's still what I would call a healthy skeptic in me. And what I have learned is that it doesn't matter if you think you're making it up, because our lives are a story that we are making up every day as we go along. So your mind brings to you exactly what it is you need to know, exactly in the way that you need to know it. So making it up, you know, that's something that we're doing all the time. And because our lives are a story that we are telling ourselves, we have the power and the choice to change things. So in the midst of what I do, the healing part comes in looking at that story and changing the outcome. I have a set of modalities that I use that all feed into one another. The energy work probably is what I've developed. I had developed the most before even getting into regression. And so I do Reiki. I am a Reiki practitioner, and I open and cleanse the chakras and balance them for people. And in the midst of that, where people are perpetually, where their chakras or a particular chakra is perpetually blocked, says to me that perhaps that comes from a past lifetime. And you know, like if your solar plexus, your seat of power, for instance, is perpetually blocked, well, maybe in other lifetimes, you know, you abused power, or you didn't step up to the plate with your power. And so that chakra is blocked. And often in doing regression, taking somebody back to look at those issues of power, we can unblock it and it will stay unblocked. So with the energy work, then I also do counseling, and that's inner child and traumas. I also specialize in grief work. And to me, a lot of what we experience is grief. We are grieving on a daily basis something, whether it's aging or a loss of some sort, because grieving is obviously, grief is about loss. But it doesn't have to be death per se. There's a lot of things that feed into that. So counseling often helps me as well to know, because if I hear patterns of speech or the same issues coming up all the time, then it's worth looking at a past life to see where that comes from. And my most recent thing has been medical intuition. I've been very interested in that along the way. I have studied with Mona Lisa Schultz and Carolyn Mace. And it just speaks to me of the traumas that we carry. It speaks to me of looking at, you know, what's going on in our lives, why we may have a particular thing happening in our body. And I can feel the blocks and I get information about it. And so this is true of energy work, and it's true of the medical intuition in particular, is that I am in your, you know, the experience with you, and I often get pieces. Like if I'm doing energy work, I might feel like somebody else is in the room, or, and that they are pointing me towards something in somebody's body. And so I can feel that energy, and I can feel where I need to go with it. So it's all been very interesting, but I kind of know when you need regression, or when regression would be the helpful thing for you to do. I'm really proud of this slide, because that little girl, picture of the little girl right there is my great niece, Aubrey, and she is representative of regression. She's representative of reincarnation. She's representative of you know, the starting anew, which we can do and choose to do in any moment. So I also believe that we carry our past lives in our DNA. And so when we come in with, okay, in this particular incarnation, I am going to work on releasing whatever it might be. For me, I came into this life with, I have in one arm benign blood tumors, and it took a long time to discover what that was about. But I also had an unnatural fear of knives for a long time. I don't anymore because I understand it. So this arm has been cut off in several lifetimes for various reasons. One that I know about is I was stealing food to feed my children, and my arm was cut off. I've also lost the arm in battle. And my understanding about now is that this is the last time I need to deal with this. This is sort of the releasing of all of that in this particular lifetime. And I won't have to, or I will choose not to, because, you know, most likely I chose that this was something I was going to deal with now. But I won't have to deal with that again if I so choose to now let this go. And because I have the understanding behind it, and I've done so much work to understand what's going on in that arm, it doesn't bother me at all like it used to. It doesn't hurt like it did. I do know when the weather's going to change. It still bothers me on that level, but for the most part, I'm good with that. So for me, it's doing the work that I do. It's understanding where somebody is and just knowing, well, you know, regression might help to release this, or it might help for you to have the understanding behind it so that you can heal. So I wanted to, first of all, tell you about some of the traumas that other people have had that I've helped them with, to give you a better understanding of how the healing works. For me, I knowingly have had 3 people come to me for regression that knew they were transitioning. And one of the 3 was trying to decide, she was a friend, and she was trying to decide whether she wanted to stay or go. And through that regression, it came out that she was more afraid of staying than she was of leaving. And so she transitioned not long after we did that regression. She had lung cancer. And then I had another person who was actually a healer here in the city. And she came to me, she knew she was transitioning. She came to me a couple of weeks before she passed away. She was looking to connect with a guide to meet her on the other side. And we did. And she left, I mean, she looked so blissful when she left. And that's one of the things that I love about regression as well. When people leave after they've worked through something or released something or opened something up, they look 10 years younger. They look like this huge weight's been lifted. Eyes are bright, skin is glowing. That's probably the greatest reward of the work for me, is to see how transformed people get when they leave. So that was this woman coming to me knowing that she was leaving and just needing to know who would meet her on the other side that was very special for me. Then I had another guy who came to me for regression who has since passed away. He wasn't sure if he had MS or Agent Orange. He had been in the Gulf War and he thought he had picked up Agent Orange, and he was starting to experience numbness. And so his regression was, he was a medieval warrior, so to speak, riding a horse in chainmail. And he was going to battle. But when the bridge over the moat opened, his horse veered off into the water and he drowned. And he carried that, that shame with him into this lifetime, like he had failed and he'd let himself down and he'd let his men down. And so what we did during that regression was to literally work to remove the chainmail that was keeping him stiff, and in his body, his whole body was stiff. And so in the process of him working through this and doing this and taking off this chainmail, an arm fell off with it. And that was the arm that was experiencing the most numbness. And so in the healing that we did with that, I had him see the arm, reattached and free flowing, and his body free flowing. And it was probably one of the most memorable regressions I've ever done. And it was very healing for him. Unfortunately, he couldn't sustain it. There was really this part of him that was very shut down and didn't feel deserving really of being here. And so I would often remind him, because he continued to come to me came for counseling, he came for energy work. And I just continued to remind him who he was and that it was not about failure. That was just about, an experience, and that we had changed that experience and that he could continue to change the experience here in this lifetime. The doctor who works with Carolyn Mace, Norm Shealy says, we can 100% heal ourselves of anything through visualization. And I so believe that. If we have the concentration, the desire, the willingness to let something go, people stay where they're comfortable. And one of my favorite phrases that I use is being comfortable in your uncomfortableness, because it's something that we're used to. And we don't know what's on the other side of what we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. And just being willing to look at those, the other side of things, and see things the way that we want them to be. That's a big part of my ministry in New Thought, is seeing things the way you want them to be, and getting rid of all those doubts. And it could be, if it's something that's recurring, and something that you're having a hard time letting go of, it just could be that you're in that pattern, that energy pattern that keeps it there. And so my mentor has a phrase that I just love. And she's, she says it's an old story with jet lag. And so letting go of the old patterns and the old stories and bringing ourselves into present time is unbelievably life-changing. So I encourage you with that, because that also just goes back to our story. Our lives are a story that we are telling ourselves. Another person came to me who was really on his spiritual journey. And he didn't know how to move himself from where he was to a higher consciousness. And in his regression experience, he ended up climbing this mountain. And as he climbed the mountain, he realized that it was a crystal mountain, and that the vibrations of the crystals were elevating him, and that he needed to work with crystals to help him get where he needed to go. So we identified, before he left, we identified several crystals that could help in his consciousness raising. And so he got them. He went out and got them. But that was a really phenomenal, because as I said, I'm in your experience with you, and I could see that mountain, and it was like a pyramid. It was absolutely beautiful. So that was a standout moment. Then I had somebody come to me, and this is probably one of the most comical regressions I've ever done or been experienced with. This guy started talking in an Irish brogue, and he was talking about his life and things that he was experiencing in that lifetime, but it was the brogue that was down pat. I've also had somebody come, and she started speaking in tongues. And whoever she was talking to, they were having a conversation, and I just sort of backed away, and I let it go on for as long as it needed to go on. She was so comforted and so grateful when she came out of that, because she got exactly what it was that she needed. And, she really hadn't had a sense of why she came. She just knew she needed, to come and have a regression. And then I had the experience with somebody who came to me because they were seeing double. And so it was a bleed through from another life. And when she started to talk to me about this, seeing double, I said, when you leave here, you are not going to be seeing double anymore. And sure enough, we got to the root of what that was, and she didn't have another problem with it. So our past lives do bleed through in some ways. They bleed through emotionally. They bleed through physically. They bleed through spiritually, and mentally as well. And so we're here to heal those things. And the beauty of this work for me is in the healing, is in seeing people just transform. So if you were to come to me for counseling, let's say, and I said to you, I think maybe this particular trauma that you're experiencing has roots in a past life. Are you willing to look at it? Then in another session, we might do a regression. Same is true for energy work, any of it. I've just been very lucky in being able to do these different things and have it all work together so beautifully. I also, one of the other things that I do that I'm really interested in, and I don't talk about it a lot, but Carol wants me to do a class on it, is the archetypes. And the archetypes are energies that we carry with us that fuel our sacred contracts. Sacred contracts being things that we have chosen to come in to work on. And so the archetypes, we all have 4 universal archetypes that everybody has. The child, the wounded child, or some form of the child, the saboteur, the victim, and the prostitute. And those are 4 universal archetypes that we carry. And then I can help you find your other 8 because we have 12 of them. And I plot them on a astrological wheel. And so you can see in what house your archetypes fall and what it means for you. That's also very helpful because astrological wheels are really wheels of past lives.